let's get to Grayson's grades. They're at 97.3 ESPN.com. After every Eagles game, man, Grayson, your job has been way too easy this year. Everybody's an F.
Yeah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's just bad all around. And, the one guy who's on there, I think it's fair to say, and you already hit the nail on the head in this regard as well about Darius Slay. He did. He owned everything after the game last night. He said it was his fault, and I agree with you. The loss was not his fault, and I also agree with Hunter. I thought his coverage was really good. You just had a guy who wanted the ball, really badly and was going to do whatever he could to get his hands on it in those 50-50 situations. And, Darius Slay was just, I thought his coverage was great. I'll say good, not great. But, he just, for whatever reason, was losing all those battles last night. And all season long, he hasn't, he's been a guy who's done so well on the receiver he's on that those guys aren't even really getting many chances. Last night, Russell Wilson, like you said, had all confidence in his receiver to win those 50-50 balls, and he did. And DK Metcalf just went off, as we all know. And, you look at all the different sides of this game, and it was just bad all along. It just got off to a very bad start. And you just found yourself saying, okay, well, if all the news is right about Jalen Hurts, I'm guessing he's coming in any play now. And then he does, and then he comes out after completing a pass when Carson Wentz hadn't been able to do that. I don't even know where you guys want to go from there, where you want to begin, but it's just, F's all around for the most part. I think Dallas Goedert played pretty well. He gave him an A. But other than that, maybe a couple defensive guys, but just bad.
Yeah, well, you gave an F to Wentz. You gave an F to Peterson. Those two guys seem to be at the top of the report card, or the bottom of it, I guess, every single week. I don't know if that one has more blame than the other, but when you see Wentz and you're giving him an F, are you giving him an F because Peterson's coaching him to an F, or are you giving him an F because his play is so bad? Is it a combination? I mean, I thought Wentz was an F- last night. I mean, I thought he was about as bad as you could be, just missing guys. Guys are open. He doesn't want to throw. And I feel bad for him. I do. I feel bad for him. I'm at the point, Scott, where I feel bad for the kid because I feel like he has completely lost confidence.
Yeah, and I feel like I agree with you, and I feel like he's kind of alone. Like he's just a loner down the street with no friends around him, nobody around him, in the sense that he's got no help. He's got nobody who is looking to say, hey, follow me, I'll get you to where you need to go. And I'm talking about the coaching staff in that regard. I don't think he believes anybody in there can get him, the answers he needs right now. And you look at his mechanics, and I thought Brian Greasy did a great job last night, breaking down a lot of that stuff. I've been talking about it for a while. He does not step up in the pocket. He does not throw off that front foot, really lean into it and get something behind the ball. He put too much air under it at times last night. He was missing guys that were open. And once again, they identified within the broadcast, spots where he missed reads, where, he gave up on Alshon Jeffrey on a one-on-one battle, if you remember last night's broadcast, that Jeffrey ultimately won. And if Wentz would have looked even back at that after he looked away, he could have led Jeffrey, and that could have been a touchdown. I agree with you. You have a receiver, even one receiver right now, like Russell Wilson does, where he feels at least that he could throw it up to and give a guy a chance to make a play. I thought Jalen Reagor had a shot at a touchdown last night. Wasn't the best thrown ball for sure, but it went off his fingertips. And I feel like Wentz looks around and he's like, look, I got nobody to throw the ball to. Right now, he doesn't feel like he has an offensive line that can protect him well enough. All this is in his head as the snap happens. And it's 2, 3, 4 seconds, and he's got a guy on his face that he's got to try to get away from. He's trying to throw the ball away more. I still don't feel like he's doing it enough. There's just so many things. And now the question becomes, Mike, is Carson Wentz fixable? Yes, I think he's fixable. Is he fixable this year? No, I don't think it. I think you're going to see more of the same week in and week out till we get to the offseason where he has a chance to really address these mechanics, these reads, these things he thinks he's seeing and not seeing. I think he's seeing go on the field, quite frankly. When you look at these highlights, these films, clips of these games. And so I think there's definite issues there. And I think the Eagles, quite frankly, are waiting for the moment they're eliminated, and then it's the Jalen Hurts show the rest of the way.
Yeah, I do think that Carson Wentz was absolutely horrendous, pitiful. You can't defend anything that he does, but I do think that there's a lot that plays a role into this, whether it's lack of separation at times, the offensive line, Doug Peterson. I just think it's a combination of so many things that's making this happen. So we'll start with the head coach. I just felt so many times last night I heard, well, there's miscommunication here. These two are not on the same page there. These guys clearly don't understand what they're doing here. And when that happens, I got to look at the head coach. So what were your thoughts on Doug Peterson as a whole last night?
Well, my biggest problem with Doug was I felt like he committed an egregious offense. You have, with 8 minutes left, the chance to kick a field goal and make it a one-possession game. Your defense is playing, quite frankly, pretty well against a Seattle team that puts up more points than they did last night typically. And you give your defense a chance to continue to go out there and get you the ball back down one possession. And he goes for it on 4th and 4 from the 15. You need a touchdown that bad in that spot? I just didn't understand. I mean, to me, that was I tweeted out, like, that was on the film clip that Jeffrey Lurie shows him later when he says, "This is why I'm firing you," as part of the reason why. I just thought it was an egregious offense. I don't care how aggressive you want to be. That was not the time or place to go for it. You talked about the miscommunication. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. Why? Well, we heard about the reports that said that Jalen Hurts had more first-team snaps. Well, if there's less Carson Wentz first-team snaps, there's less communication to work on with these guys who may not be out there as much as they could be, and those reps. But yeah, you're talking about the coaching. Ultimately, if there's miscommunication in week 12, that's a big problem, and I think the finger needs to be pointed at the coaches. You can't really say that's on the players. Now, yeah, there was a lot of it, and I think some of it is on the players, but for the most part, that's on the coaches to have the guys prepared to know what they're going to do in every given situation when they see something. Now, we also heard stuff about reports, that the offense was getting dumbed down. Well, if there's this much thinking that needs to go on out there, how much dumbing down has really taken place? And perhaps if it has, it needs to be dumbed down to the Doug Peterson offense for dummies. And let's get that out there because there's too much going wrong. That interception, whether it was Carson's fault for the miscommunication or Goddard's. Goddard said it was his. You saw the screenplay that I thought they broke down earlier, that somebody didn't run the right screen that should have been happening based on the way the offensive lineman went out in coverage. Perhaps it was Boston Scott. Perhaps it was a receiver, Jalen Reagor. Either way, that was a sack. There is a lot going on here, and that's got to be on the coaches. I think these guys clearly don't seem to me like they're ready to take the field and play, especially if you're going to go out there, and I think it was 5 straight possessions, 3 and out. You're not going to win very many games, if any, as we've seen this season, because they just can't get first downs. And that was one of the staples, if you remember, back in 2017, this team was unstoppable on third down. So I don't think Doug forgot how to call offenses, and I don't think Carson Wentz forgot how to be a quarterback. I think somewhere along the line, these two guys are just so lost that it can't be fixed this season.
Yeah, we're looking at Grayson's grades, and of course, Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz both in the F category. You also, I don't know that I ever remember you doing this, through Howie Roseman in there as well. You gave him an F for the game last night.
Yeah, I mean, that ultimately to me was more of I felt like there needed to be some accountability thrown at Howie. Because again, I'm like, I sit here and I go through, and it depends, I guess, on my mood every day or where we are during the week. Yeah, I'm like, who really should be to blame here? And last night, DK Metcalf, and there's all the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, it was thrown front and center right in Jeffrey Lurie's face last night that guy could have been wearing an Eagles jersey, and somebody blew it. Howie right now is the guy who I think you have to point that finger at. His drafts have been awful, and I know that there's, it may not all these picks may not all be Howie's guys, but he's the guy wearing the general manager tag, so he's the guy who's going to take the blame. And this to me, that was last night. The guys on the field, the lack of depth at the positions that are out there, and it's not just like this one position has a lack of depth. It's all over the field. And that's, where you look at Doug and say, well, I mean, he can only coach the guys that are in the uniform for the team he's coaching for. Well, that is on Howie, who's putting them there. And, certainly, like I said, Doug is not without blame. Carson's not without blame. But Howie's the guy putting this team together right now, and how far they've fallen in 3 years. I think you have to start with the general manager, and I just felt like Howie needed to be called out last night
Let me ask you this.
Mostly because of the DK Metcalf thing.
Let me ask you this. And look, if Roseman is the guy, I have no problem giving him the blast, all right? I'd have no problem. How sure are we? Because, we had Sal on yesterday. He said, look, this is a collaborative effort. They all own these mistakes, meaning Jeff Lurie signs off on this. Doug Peterson signs off on this. This isn't Roseman going in with an iron fist saying, I'm taking JJ and it's my way or the highway. That it's a collaborative effort in that draft room.
No, you're right. We don't know all of the nitty-gritty details, and boy, wouldn't it be great if we did? Because you hear more and more that Jeffrey Lurie is turning into Jerry Jones, and the problem with that is, and this is where they need to get this story under control, because this is going to spin like crazy over the month of December to the end of the season, when ultimately whatever happens, whatever accountability steps that Jeffrey Lurie wants to take, he takes. But you're hearing things that Doug doesn't have complete control over the roster and who plays, whether the Jalen Hurts order to play is coming from above. Well, how's that going to play out if you decide to get rid of Doug Peterson when you try to get the next guy? They're going to look at you when Jeffrey Lurie's sitting across from him and say, I want full control over my roster. Well, I think there's a lot of looking in the mirror that all these guys need to do, including Lurie, and he needs to ask himself, well, how do I really want to run this team, and do I want to hire people that I can just trust to go do the job? And if they aren't doing the job, we'll deal with that after the season. He can't get involved. He just can't. And if he is getting involved in the draft room, that's not a good thing in any way, shape, or form. There's guys out there who are a lot smarter than you or have the expertise to be able to do these kind of jobs, to evaluate talent. Now, I'm not saying it's Howie Roseman that should be doing that, but I think Jeffrey Lurie needs to step back, let these guys do their jobs. If they're not doing their jobs, then you have the power to make somebody go away and bring in the guys who can do the job. So I understand all that, but I just think Howie Roseman's had opportunities to even make some trades within seasons here to get guys in here, that there were deals out there that I thought could have been had. And if somebody's trumping him, then fine, that's on them. But I think there were opportunities here, not just in the draft, that Howie's blown. And to me, that's where I start my accountability tour. And whether you want to continue it on to Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz isn't going anywhere. So it's those two guys to me who are squarely on the hottest seat there is around the link.
And I do think one of my biggest takeaways was at the end of the game, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was along the lines of, how do you rebuild this franchise because it's broken? And that just ties directly into what, you talked about with Howie and Doug and Jeffrey Lurie. There is clearly an issue happening behind the scenes, but I want to continue with these Fs. Miles Sanders is on this list. And look, Doug Peterson got away from the run. He only had 6 carries. That's an issue in itself. But I do think that there's something happening, and I don't think it's always Carson Wentz, but there's something happening in this passing game where he's just not catching the football. It's almost like he's trying to make that move before he receives the ball.
Yeah, there's something going on there that isn't. And again, this isn't the first game where Miles Sanders has dropped multiple passes out the flat or, things like that. And that just, those plays, they have the potential to break. They, at the very least, are going to get you 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yards. And then now you're in second and more manageable, or third and a lot more manageable. They aren't like huge glaring mistakes, but they're problems, and they are affecting an offense that can't move the ball, because those plays become even bigger for an offense that can't move the ball. You've got to catch that thing. And what I found last night was, I thought, okay, Miles Sanders can only control how many times he gets to carry it based on how many times those run plays are called. But even, we're giving Corey Clement, 6 carries for Miles Sanders, and we're giving Corey Clement carries, and we're putting Boston Scott out there to start drives. Boston Scott's strength is being that change of pace back to Miles Sanders, because he has a better burst to hit the hole than Miles does. And that is something the defense doesn't seem prepared for. But when he's out there to start a drive, they pretty much key into that right away. So Miles Sanders, to me, what the coaches looked to do last night was say, okay, let's get Miles the ball in space, because that's his strength. So he's out in the flat, nobody's around him, and he just isn't looking the ball into his hands. But like I said, this has been a problem for multiple weeks. And then again, you go back to the coaching. Well, why aren't they working on him with this? And it's a matter of, look, Miles needs to stay after practice a little bit longer. We're going to work on catching the ball a little better. That's Deuce Staley. That's, Doug Peterson. I don't care who it is. Somebody's got to have him out there and say, we need you to catch the ball because we want to use you in that regard. And quite frankly, if he doesn't start catching the ball, these defenses are going to know Miles is in there to either run it or pass protect. He's not going to be going out there, and nor do we have to worry about diverting too much attention to him as a receiver. So he's hurting himself, and that's got to be something that gets resolved as well. It is a big problem, and that is why I gave him an F last night.
Well, yeah, he is certainly – there's something going on with the way he's catching the football because that's something that he did, a nice job of. He made that big, tough catch in that game last year, the game against Washington. So he has it in him. I don't know what's happened this year. Him and Wentz just do not seem to be on the same page. But catching the ball out of the backfield, he had 50 catches last year. This is something that he thrived in. So that's just another problem for the 2020 Eagles. For the full grades, go to 97.3 ESPN.com and get more from Grayson's grades here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. All right, Scott, hope you had a great Thanksgiving, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, I did. Thank you. You guys too.
All right, Scott Grayson, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.